Yes, we
So
can.
here we are, coming in today, Pop Culture Ponderers. I'm Lauren,
I'm Joe.
and we have kind of like a wide general ponder today. This is one that kind of came up just because, like, this is content that comes out all the time. It's stuff that you and I are both into. If you cannot tell from our shirts, you might be just listening. But our topic for the day is going to be Star Wars. We're just going to kind of ponder that universe.
Yeah, is there any movie that's more iconic than Star Wars? I don't know.
Yeah, it is. It's one of like the original kind of like franchise builders. It comes from a very special time and place, and it has like an interesting origin story to it. And now what it's become today is huge. So exactly, Star Wars is a fun place for us to go. Um, and for me, if we're going to start Star Wars, we have to kind of start at the beginning, which is weird because it's not exactly the beginning.
Nope, it definitely is not.
Which is one of the fun like little bits of Star Wars itself. But yeah, we're going to start with the original trilogy, which is 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
Um, I think that that's a place to start because that's where the movies themselves started. That's where I was first brought into them.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
Yeah, watched those when I was like a little kid.
Yeah, I remember growing up and my parents weren't into Star Wars or anything, but my aunt, uh, Suzanne, was huge into Star Wars. So her and I bonded over that as well. I was a kid, and it was one of the greatest movies. I could watch it over and over. I still do.
Hmm.
And Amanda will look at me and be like, "Why are you watching Star Wars again?" And I'm like, it's just so easy to get into it, and you still notice things today that I didn't notice back then.
Oh yeah, those movies, like yeah, there's a reason that they were so good at the time. And they were really special too because like they were something kind of brand new. So they were big in my house when I was little. My dad was big on Star Wars. He had those were some of like my foundation movies, like the movies that I remember distinctly from being a small child. So the trilogy, the original 4, 5, and 6 of Star Wars, the original Indiana Jones,
Okay.
those trilogy, that three right there. And then the other for me that has like one of those like really strong, we've got Star Wars, we have Indiana Jones. um and I think that when I was like a super small child, the other things that my dad were into, I mean, like there was things like Star Trek and stuff like that, but like that in terms of movies, like those are some of the big ones that kind of like stuck for me. We watch these movies all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. I literally can't even tell you how old I was when I first saw them. Um, and my brother and I, we grew up on these stories. I can probably tell you that I was young enough the first time that I didn't really get what was happening. Like it took me many rewatches and growing and changing with the story to understand the depths of what was going on, the political stories that were happening, as opposed to just like, ah, cool, they're fighting with light swords. That's really, look at that. There's a little green guy. I like him. He could be my friend. Like that was my initial reaction.
Yeah.
I couldn't have been much older than like 5 or 6 when I first started watching these movies. Um, and I do. They've completely shaped the way that I look at films, for sure, for sure. But not only that, they've kind of shaped film themselves, like you were talking about. They are iconic movies.
Yeah. That I mean, there's a lot of shows that I guess they kind of come off of that movie genre and the way that they you see like spaceships and stuff. Some of the designs are
Hmm.
similar to what George Lucas did with the I'm trying to think of an exact one, but I can't off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of your iconic ships, you've got like okay. So if we're gonna go to 4. You're always gonna have 4, 5, and 6. You're gonna have the Death Star. You're gonna have the Millennium Falcon. Those are gonna be your big ships. That's gonna define those movies. When we start with 4 too, we're coming in on that movie. Okay, the way that that movie is being made. George Lucas is shopping this around to a bunch of different places, and everyone is telling him no. He has this idea for this grand space epic. He wants to tell this story, essentially, that is this family. He wants to tell this family dynasty of power in space. And this is coming at a time when sci fi is really expanding. A lot of interesting things are happening in the books and in like movies and TV shows. Like, those are frontiers that we're just starting to explore in terms of storytelling. They haven't been popular, but science fiction, that idea of science really being the gateway into the future, is coming up. And he cannot get Star Wars made for the life of him.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to touch it. And so he essentially decides, cool, I'll do it on my own. Like that decision right there. Fine. Nobody believes in my story. Nobody thinks I can do it. I'll do it on my own.
Yeah, I was watching a couple behind the scenes on how they made some of this stuff and like
Yes.
how limited he was to what he had and what he made is
Mm-hmm.
incredible. Like to make the laser and the blaster shots,
Yes.
like scratching the film so it would make that like how the hell did he think of that? Like, that's amazing that they
Right?
thought of this and made it as epic as they did, and how cool, because no one saw that before.
It was a crazy amount of ingenuity that went into that. So he looked at his own story. He knew that he wanted to tell, to some degree, even from the beginning, he knew that he wanted to tell this multi-part story. But his thing was cool. Since I'm using my own money and I'm coming in, and I'm not really sure how far I'm going to be able to get this to go. I'm going to come in where I think the story gets the most exciting. We're going to bypass one, two, and three. I'm going to make number four first because that's where things like really set off to me. We have seen, I want to tell an underdog story. So at this point, we have the empire that's risen up. I'm going to be coming in with this kid, Luke, who is force sensitive. Nobody's going to know what that means. But he's going to come in and essentially shift the balance of the universe. And much like that same idea of just like this tiny little scrappy resistance effort, exactly as they were coming through and making this movie, they were using trash can parts and broken fat, like literally whatever they could scrape together. And that resource, like that feeling of people that loved what they were doing and therefore were dedicated and completely into it, that comes across. It makes the world feel tactile and real and loved. It makes it flawed too. You have moments that are not totally perfect, but it does. That's one of the things that makes it so special is that it was just nothing but a passion project. Star Wars was originally born of nothing but love.
And it worked out, and that everybody loves it now.
Yeah,
So
exactly. That feeling carries through. So yeah, we start with four. We're introduced to Luke, you got Leia, you got Han, you got Chewie, and then of course we have Darth Vader.
yeah,
I think that those are the characters. Well, of course, and then yeah, I mean like yeah, but okay. So if we're gonna start in out of the characters that we get introduced to out of those original movies, as we're looking at our iconic characters, you've got also like Lando, you have Yoda that comes in. Who stands out for you the best? Whose arc do you follow the most? Who do you care about the most? Who's your favorite?
I mean, growing up, it was always Han Solo.
Yeah.
Loved Harrison Ford
Yeah.
and his character. I mean, whenever I remember being a kid playing on like the playgrounds
Hmm.
with my friends, and we'd play Star Wars, and I'd always try to be Han Solo.
Whenever you have the chance, be Han Solo. I mean, like, imagine the poor kid that has to be Chewy every time, and they're just like, "No, just yell in the corner. I don't want to hear you say none of your ideas. Just yell like Chewy in the corner." Yeah, nobody wants to be that kid. Yeah, and Leia was always one of those characters for me because like Leia is cool. Leia fights, Leia has ideas, Leia takes nobody's garbage. So she was always one. I liked her. Luke was not my favorite. Poor Luke. I know the stories about him, but he's just too sweet and just innocent and kind of running wrong like a little puppy dog, and he doesn't quite know what's up. Um, but yeah, and then as I got older too, I enjoy Han's energy quite a bit, quite a bit. Um, I think that it's interesting the way that we watch these characters kind of evolve, and Vader of course is like one of those iconic characters. He's the center point in a lot of ways for this entire universe. He is one of like our guidelines or our through lines that carries us through. The Skywalker bloodline is there, but it's through Vader that we really connect to it or that we feel that presence through the entire set of films.
Yeah,
And when you're looking at that character, he's so interesting because he's essentially the thing that you connect to is a voice. Again, we've talked about voice work before. That is potentially, most likely, the best voice work that's ever been done by anybody ever. James Earl Jones
yeah.
as Darth Vader.
He's definitely iconic, and I mean, he was Mufasa in The Lion
Yes.
King, which you can't get a better voice than that.
No, it just turns out that again, like you can have him voice anything. He could probably voice like a tube of toothpaste, and I would have been like, "Oh my gosh, I should follow that tube of toothpaste into battle now."
Yeah, no, but the character of Darth Vader, he's so iconic, and in the first well, first, yeah, first
The first three, which are four, five, and
yeah,
six.
4, 5, and 6. It always
When we
took
say the
me,
first three, we in our hearts will always mean four, five, and
yeah,
six.
the
We are of an
original,
age we can't switch from that. That's like
yeah.
that's the original. Those are the first three.
So to me, like those three, and Darth Vader's incredible. Like the story you get, then you find out it's Luke's father. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
that blew my mind as a kid, and then to go into Return of the Jedi and
Yeah.
see him go from being this this bad guy who will kill anybody to Now he's trying to save his son.
Yeah, yes. He was a figure. So, like, again, as a small kid, and I've watched these movies repeatedly, as a little kid, he was very, very scary. Like, there was something really imposing. Just the mask, the way that that was constructed, there was something very skeletal about the face. There was something about the breath that occurred. And um, there was something about the controlled fury of Darth Vader, like the scenes of the fact that everyone was afraid of him and he had to do very little to create that feeling. It was one of those things. um we're looking at a different kind of pacing and filmmaking being made there. We're relying on audience participation and awareness and them not being on their phones for the majority of the film. So they do have things like there's certain pacing or buildup or whatever. Or the scene, for example, when we're with the council and they're questioning some of his decisions, or the admiralty and they're questioning his decisions, and you watch him choke that mana and just calm as everything. And everyone else at the table is just trying to be very still and very calm, because the whole point is, one, there's nothing we can do, and two, just keep him from looking at you. I remember being a little kid and looking at that character and being like, oh no, that's like legit scary. There was something very freaky about Darth Vader. And then by the end, you see him still. There is no face to give you that guidance, but we see through his action. And again, just that voice where it guides you. By the end, when he's struggling to be a father to his son and to find goodness in himself and to believe what Luke has to say. This character that we have seen no empirical evidence of goodness. We haven't met Anakin yet. We don't know that story. But to believe in the turn of this character, to believe at the end that he has really come around to come through nothing but this man's voice and this, like, the way that he was acted. And like there's something to be said too about the person they chose to put in that suit, about the imposing stature, about the way that he chooses to move, about the consciousness of his actions and motions. Like there's something special in that. And they do that a few times because the same thing happens with the droids. They're
Yeah.
putting a person in a suit and something special happens there.
Yeah. No, the fact that um I you told me the guy's name and I can
Oh
never
yeah. Anthony Daniels and Kenny Baker.
yeah,
Yes.
but the way he moves as C3PO is
Yes.
incredible. Like you believe he is an actual robot the way he moves. Like
Absolutely.
and just his dialogue is, I mean, it's still stuff that people quote to this day. And
And the voice is so iconic. Like your brain instantly just like it knows the tone of C3PO, human side. Like there's something about it that's completely. And then him constantly complaining R2D2 too. The fact that R2D2 never speaks. He does nothing but beep and whir
yeah,
and like shoot out little eyes and like little pincers and like little, he's got his little prongs or whatever. And again, the amount of character that you have through the voice work, the personality, just the way that the person inside is moving, the way that Kenny Baker is moving, completely convinces you that yes, I do love that little droid. I
yeah.
would fight for him. That's amazing.
And that's another character that develops very well between 4 and 6, and then back to the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Even the new ones, but
Yeah, but like exactly, there's a through line between they did a good job of understanding like how like okay, so each movie has to have their own individual story. This is before we see franchises get built and made all the time. That's something that's really common now, and the way that franchises get built and made is different now. They have a different formula. Marvel is a beautiful example of that. That's one of the best times it's ever been done. And not all of Star Wars is as smooth as that, but we have the same kind of idea where we have each individual movie. 4 has its own story, 5 has its own story, 6 has its own story. But as a unit of three, there's also exactly like this overarching, like you have the rebellion, you have the sense of human triumph, you have human will and what we're willing to do to stand up. And again, the intrinsic underdog story that's mirrored through an individual and that's mirrored through a society. I don't know for me if when we look at 1, 2, and 3, the newer ones, I don't know if each individual movie's storyline holds up as strongly for me. I know we have things like Clone Wars and stuff like that. Like they do break them down in their own individual events, but for me, I'm not sure if each one of those individual storylines hold up as well as the original like 4, 5, and 6 do. Those are so clear and they each have their own like familiar feeling. Like I can think of each one and I know exactly what happens and exactly where it goes. They're not one big continued story, even though they're telling one big continued story. Does
yeah,
that make sense?
No, I'm getting what you're saying, and I feel like they did a really good job with the animated series with Clone Wars. There was a lot of information in that, but
That's again, like Star Wars is a universe that has also expanded and in like a really unusual way too. Because Star Wars was originally just owned by Lucas, it was his story. He didn't have to really compromise with anybody on the story that he was telling or the way that he wanted to tell it. And that meant that Star Wars got to expand and get really large in a really unusual way. You have the movies, which operate as his canon, what he's in control of and what he's able to make. And then we have tons of books which were made too. The amount of writing that was done and the amount of writing that like that'll take you all the way back to the Knights of the Old Republic. Like you can take the Star Wars universe back thousands of years before the Skywalkers are ever born. You can follow the Sith Lords. You can choose your different factions. It's a lot like some of the other universes, like Warhammer, where it's a bunch of individual authors contributing what they want to the story, and that makes the universe really, really large. Then Disney steps in, and the universe gets a little bit smaller. They cut out a lot of that and then re-expand in their own way. So Star Wars is interesting because like what's set as canon really depends on what you've chosen to take in and the parts that resonate you with you and carry in your heart. Like to me, I think that you can operate within the rules of Star Wars without having to follow one specific story. Even though we technically have the story of the Skywalkers
yeah,
as the one specific story that you're supposed to be paying attention to.
yeah. Well, that to me will always be like my go-to movies, just because I grew up with them and
Right?
so iconic.
They have that moment in your heart. All right. So as you're going through those movies, like as you're going through and you're watching them now as an adult, is there anything that you get from them now that you didn't get from them as a kid? Or like how have they changed for you as you've watched them through time?
That's a deep question.
I know. I was curious about because like because again, like and it might be a little different for me because I was so little when I first started watching those movies that again I couldn't really understand exactly what was happening. I knew the parts that I thought were cool and I knew the parts that I thought were scary, but it took me years to be able to see like again, even by the time we get to the plans for the Death Star and they've been retrieved at the loss of great life,
Yeah,
even things like that line for me has changed again and again through time to the point where before you even get to Rogue One, before we get to the fact that we have a movie that really shows that loss of
yeah,
life, the idea of this empire being spread and the resistance and that idea of the few banding together against the many that changed as I was able to really understand what that cost would have been like and that universe and how it functioned. Was it like that for you, or because you were older when you first saw it, did you have like a more clear view? Has it stayed more consistent?
I don't know. I think I'm kind of still like I said, I'm still noticing things that I didn't never really looked at it like in those kind of views
Hmm.
before. So I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch it so I actually
Right?
get
That'll be the change for the next
yeah.
time that you watch them. You'll be like, huh,
But
I really am thinking about galactic resistance now.
it is crazy to think about. You have this massive empire that is throughout the galaxy, and then there's only a handful of rebels that are fighting against them.
Right. And like, especially when we watch from the first few movies, like, okay, so now I was gonna say I'm gonna start to include one, two, and three in our discussion. Not that we could be done with four, five, and six. There's plenty to go back to, and we could literally just spend the entire episode on one individual movie.
Yeah,
But I'm gonna start to play with that idea of one, two, and three because like there's so much more of that that happens in those movies.
yeah,
There we are really discussing the political unrest and how the structure was set up and how it fell apart and how that's affecting. So like we kind of switch our narrative storytelling like mentalities. We go from telling the story of the Skywalkers because four, five, and six are so much about Luke, Leia, Han. Like you're looking at the three of them,
yeah,
and they are the important part of the story. And those pieces of the Empire and the Rebellion are functioning around them.
yeah,
It's how they interact with them. When we come to one, two, and three, we have Anakin, you have Obi-Wan as a solid through line, and you have Padme or Amidala, like that, I think are your three. Those are your three characters that you're your solid through lines that are
yeah,
carrying you through your films and are your emotional centerpieces. But instead of focusing necessarily on their emotional journeys, we're seeing so much more how the worlds effect and how the world's changing, how its turbulence is really forcing like the crucible of their personal change. It's not them interacting and changing the world, it's the world changing them so
Yeah.
completely. That is a big tone shift for me in that universe.
Yeah, because you see a big change in all the characters from one, two, three, because you go from Obi-Wan being the Padawan
Yes,
to
yes.
now he's got to take over Qui-Gon's mission of training Luke as a Jedi.
Exactly. So the Jedi have the and the Jedi have such an interesting training. So exactly, a training mentality. We come in at 4, 5, and 6, and the Order has been destroyed. Um, the Empire's wiped them out. Vader's made it his crusade essentially, or it's become the crusade that there should be no Jedi. That way of life needs to end. Instead, we have what we come to know as the Sith Order that has risen, which is a master and an apprentice. There are only ever two.
Yeah.
Um, which of course makes Vader's play for Luke even more fun. That little moment of like, cool, bro, we could do it. We could run the universe together. Um, but we don't really get to know like the Jedi way of life and like what that order would have looked like. We have a sense that it is focused around goodness and balance. We see Obi-Wan a little bit, and we get a little bit of training from Yoda in the swamps with Luke. But that's really more about harnessing this physical power. Because even Yoda at that point is looking at the philosophies behind it way different. Frankly, my man has been burned. He's living in a hut in a swamp, and he's just like, cool, you need to learn to control your force powers, or you're gonna go off the rocket because your dad went off the rock. Like, you just stay
Yeah.
on the rails, bro. Listen to me and follow only my teachings. Um, and that struggle of good and bad and the more empathy, we see more of that in the beginning, I think. Um, because there exactly we have little Anakin who isn't, he has not become Darth Vader yet, and we have Obi-Wan, who has not become jaded and had these tremendous losses and felt like the decisions in the path that he made have essentially destroyed the universe. Which he's not like wrong. Um, but I think that makes a big, big difference in terms of like being able to connect to the emotional journeys of these characters. So when you're looking at 1, 2, and 3, do you connect Anakin to Vader? Do they feel like the same character to you? 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 5, and 6. Do you feel like you're truly watching the through line of one character develop, or do they feel distinctly different? Do you have trouble reconciling them as one character in your head?
No, I think I do, just because it I mean, this is why I love Darth Vader. He is one of the most like you get so in depth with the character, with
Mm-hmm.
the story building, because you see him as a child,
Mm-hmm.
and then growing up, and then by episode 2 now he's like a teenager,
Yeah.
and he's training, and he's becoming the Jedi that he's training to be. And then in 3 you see him take the arc back to Darth Vader.
Right. Um, and I have to say, especially when you're watching 1, 2, and 3, again, like by the time you get to 4, 5, and 6, the Jedi have been decimated. So we're not seeing their functioning world order. And we have only the myths and stories about them. So the best of that has survived. And we're also, frankly, we're trying to recruit 2 kids to our side. Well, not really one. Leia's functioning on her own. She's already got her side. She's set. But we're trying to recruit Luke to our side. So we're telling him the best versions of the Force and Jedi training and what that means. Obi-Wan is trying to present that best version to him, as in it's the opposite of the darkness that Vader represents. Yoda is doing the same thing. The Force and the Jedi way is the opposite of darkness. It is the antithesis of the problems that you see in your current universe, of the antithesis of all that you face now. When you're watching 1, 2, and 3, I want to be clear. To me, the Jedi are a lot more questionable. A lot more questionable. Their basic philosophy, the basic understanding of this order and the way that it continues to function is we will take children who are too young to form any belief but the one we give them,
Yeah.
take them away from all that we know, and then we will shape and distort their their emotional regulation and their growth and development in such a way that we can harness the power that they have, the inherent ability that they have to use as we see fit. Regardless of what they're choosing to do, the balance or the order that they're saying that they serve, that's fundamentally kind of a weird vibe. And that's an odd thing to be doing. Because one of the reasons that it doesn't work with Anakin is that he's too old.
Yeah.
He already loves his mother. if you have to get a child so young that it cannot understand loving an individual, cannot understand loving a mother or being loved by a mother, can your order really represent the greatest good in the universe? Like that's a basic issue that so like again, as you're talking about like these deepening philosophies, and as we see Anakin like as a child and as a teenager and watch him grow, like it's so much more easy for me to understand the forces that drive him to the place that we see him at. Because you do, like it's one of those things he you watch him betray his child, you watch him struggle in 4, 5, and 6, um, with something that you should think or like that would be almost instinctual to so many people. Of course, like you just choose the right thing. Of course, you just do the right thing. You pick your kid. But when you see not just what happened to him in his individual life, not just his childhood and what occurs with his mother and what occurs with Padme and what occurs with Obi-Wan, but also the structure of power around him, did he ever have a chance, being as old as he was, did he ever have a chance of finding a real grounding in that philosophy? And does that philosophy have enough space to really allow for goodness, or is it only ever control? Is the Jedi way only ever representative of control?
See, I mean, that's when you get into like the fan theories and other stuff. But like I've watched videos where if Qui-Gon wasn't killed by
Mm-hmm.
Maul in the first
Mm-hmm.
episode, like
How different does
I think he would have understood Anakin a lot better than Obi-Wan did, to where he would have trained him to use his emotions better.
that's interesting. That's an interesting idea. Because like he might have.
Because his way of, well, because um God, Count Dooku
Oh yes,
was
yes.
Qui-Gon's master, and like he talks about him in episode 2 about how if he was still alive, he would have sided with him with the separatists and all that other
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But like his philosophy was a lot different, and you see that when he's trying to recruit Anakin to being his Padawan.
And he does have more patience with like Obi-Wan at that point because Obi-Wan is actively questioning his decisions and pushing back. So we see an Obi-Wan not only like a fieriness and still like him still struggling with the Jedi way in that first one when we come into him with one, he's still not necessarily like completely calm and like centered as we'll come to see him later. But that also tells us that right, Qui-Gon has essentially not forced that mentality on his Padawan.
Yeah,
He hasn't completely stripped him and gone like, cool, no, we don't question like we just do. The fact that Obi-Wan is still that person, but then again, the fact that Qui-Gon has allowed Obi-Wan to be that person means that Obi-Wan is still unformed by the time he takes on Anakin, and Anakin's instability. Obi-Wan loses Qui-Gon at a place where he's not complete, like he's still struggling with that emotional, and in some ways probably feels like he's responsible for the loss of his master and is struggling with deep, deep grief. Takes on this Padawan that is Anakin, and Anakin is coming to him, a traumatized child, just wrecked out this kid. He's got a lot going on or whatever. And so neither of them it is. It's like a kid raising a kid in a lot of ways, as opposed to an adult raising a kid, the
yeah,
way it would have been if Qui-Gon had survived. Yeah, I could definitely see how that has like a huge long-term
yeah.
effect.
He, I don't think Obi-Wan was in his character just wasn't ready to have a Padawan yet.
Yeah, exactly. And there
But
was
did he did train him very well considering how Vader is an amazing swordsman and everything else.
he's a fantastic, like incredibly powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't think emotionally
It's
he
because
was
those
ready.
midichlorians, man,
Oh yeah.
which
Well, that
never are mentioned again. The very important midichlorians that we're not gonna bring up.
no.
But yeah, exactly. He does. How much of that, and like it's one of those things too, is frankly is Vader able to rise to the heights? It's one of those things like the Sith employ, that's their biggest fault essentially to the Jedi mentality. It's not that they're evil, they are evil. They do evil things within the universe, but it's that they embrace this emotional path, that's how they rise. If if that emotional outlet was allowed in a different way within the Jedi system, do the Sith gain as much power? Because it's one of those things. The Emperor plays on Anakin's sorrow and his grief and his fear. It's not his anger and his hate and his rage. Those are not the things that make him strong. It's grief and pain and fear. And if the Jedi way, if there's compassion there, if there's the allowance for, of course you feel these things and like as opposed to just ignore them. Because Yoda's big thing is that Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to the dark side. Like that's what happens.
Yeah.
Grief leads to like that's what happens. This is the path. Um,
And that's the exact path you see Anakin go down.
but it's one of those things, is that manifest destiny? Is that Yoda sentencing him that way because the Jedi, because his way, my way, the Jedi way, sees that that is the only path. If you do not divorce yourself, if like in Buddhism, if you do not divorce yourself from the material wants of this world, you will end up falling into destruction and disrepair. Like that's what will happen. If instead he goes, or if Obi-Wan has the tools within him as he's faced this grief with Qui-Gon. So he's lost Qui-Gon, and then exactly, he probably in that in-between time you could see him coming back to his council, coming to Yoda, looking for some advice, and Yoda essentially telling him, bro, put it in a box, okay? Because if you get real sad, it's gonna wreck you out. And so then he has this kid who's doing the same kind of thing. And if there is any allowance in the Jedi path for no, you can feel these things, or any allowance for kindness or space, like they don't give anybody the option to be flawed at all. So I feel like the Jedi end up manifesting their own enemy in the Sith just because the Sith is the human part of, or the emotional part of a creature that must manifest. With great intelligence comes emotion. It just does.
Yeah.
We know that as an intrinsic truth. Animals are the same way. So the fact that the Jedi have built this entire system on trying to cut that out, I'm not sure what their goal was like long term in terms of our movie universe, in terms of the way we see them there. Are they really like the good guys, even though they don't do the same bad things, but are they the good guys? I really am not sure. I
It's
struggled with this for years. I struggled
it's
with the Jedi.
yeah, it gets a little questionable at times because it's like
Yeah.
there's got to be some emotion, which not trying to bring more into this conversation today, but when you go into 7, 8, and 9,
Oh,
the
right.
way Luke teaches Ray, I mean, when Yoda blows up the tree and says the like get rid of the old text and everything, like
Hmm.
they weren't page turners or whatever he says,
Right.
like then you realize like Yoda now knows that the Jedi way wasn't the right way, and there's gray areas that you need to.
Yeah, that exactly have to be exactly. When you try and make a series, when you try and make a system with two absolutes, both will end up one more and more extreme. They will continue to veer off further and further from each other, and both will end up more and more flawed automatically. That's what will always happen if you divide a complex gray thing into two things of black and white, they will become the most distinct versions of themselves. And you lose any functioning in between. And the Jedi have done that. They have stripped out. So we see in 4, 5, and 6, the Empire has risen up and they've done the exact same thing. But somehow, despite the fact, and maybe it's because he was raised in the Jedi way, the Empire mirrors the Jedi society. That's what the Empire really represents. It's Jedi mentality applied to everybody. In the previous Republic, we see the Jedi as a specific force within this universe. You have the Senate, you have a bunch of different functioning arms of government. Anakin essentially, that's what he does. He takes Jedi mentality and training. There is only black and white. There is no gray.
Yeah,
There is absolute and to maintain power is to give up warmth, compassion. It is to give up any emotion because that's what the Empire represents in 4, 5, and 6. It is the black and white. It is like, look at their color palettes. Look at the Death Star. It is literally like it is designed to work completely clinically and cold. There is no emotion. There is no allowance for failure. There's no deviation
yeah,
from what we previously decided. It is literally him. It's Anakin taking the thing that hurt him and wounded him so much, but the only life philosophy he was given, and just imposing it on everyone because it's all that he knows. That's what I think the Jedi do represent in some ways. Like they are the same kind of order, just in its most corrupt form. It's if you take that to the most extreme. If you lose any of the Qui-Gon Jinn,
yeah,
you end up with that. That's what you get.
yeah,
And so it's always interesting to me when I'm watching again to figure out who's good and who's bad, who I think the villains like. There's some moments that you're very clear. You're like, okay, cool. Well, Dooku is clearly the issue in this movie. Like Dooku is doing this, or Grievous is like, oh yeah, look at him whipping around these these four lights. Like clearly he's the bad guy here. And even when you're watching 4, 5, and 6, there is to some degree that feeling of like I know who the bad guys or the good guys are because the movie is telling me. But when you take any kind of step back, it's always hard for me to know who I think is good and bad, and when I think people cross back and forth over those lines.
Yeah. And going back to Dooku, not trying to
Oh yeah, go
change the
ahead, rock with
topic,
Dooku.
but I feel like he wasn't full Sith. I don't believe he was.
Thank you, because what is it to be full Sith? Okay, so exactly, why is Dooku for you? Why is Dooku not full Sith?
I don't know, like I've seen like you see Anakin turn and his eyes change and gets like the whole
Yeah, now we
and
see, yeah, Anakin and Mustafar is a whole thing.
but like I don't think his ideals were that far off to where he was fully um under uh Lord Sidious's control.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like yes, he was his apprentice, but I don't think he was fully like I think he was trying to I don't know, maybe change the way that the Jedi were like in his own way.
Yeah, exactly. That he was looking for like a different kind of balance, that he doesn't believe in the absolute philosophies of either the Jedi or the Sith. I can see that with Dooku too, because there is, and part of it is probably just Christopher Lee, because oh my gosh, the man is amazing.
He is. And I
So he's just acting his way out of it. Could do anything if he needed to.
but I think his character saw the gray area
Yeah.
and wanted to change that you guys don't have to
And in
be one way.
right, in some ways could have almost started his own order. Like you see that again with Qui-Gon, like that sense of like this is this weird branch, this is this weird offshoot of leaving both mentalities behind. And it springs up in these different characters. We see it at Dooku, you see it in Qui-Gon, you see it in Anakin, you see it in Obi-Wan. They have a hard time, all of them have a hard time following the direct philosophies of whichever side they've been given. Anakin, who we see follow both the Jedi and the Sith Order at various, can't really stick with either one. Can't do either one completely correctly. Dooku does. He searches for. He's not looking like when you look at something like Palpatine, when in 4, 5, and 6, like where we're full evil. All I'm looking for is power and control. That's all I want. All I want is power and control. Because absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's just what it does. The more that you give me, the more that I want. Dooku's motivations don't look like that.
No.
It doesn't seem like he's just trying to grab up what he can grab. He's just looking at this system and going, cool, this doesn't work. I know that you guys think that it's perfect and that what you're doing is the right way to do it, but I'm not sure. And frankly, my man, I'm not sure either. I think that he's kind of right there.
I think he's in that gray area because that I mean in episode 2 he's talking to Obi-Wan and
Hmm.
saying like I want you to join me. Your master would have joined me is
Right.
what he was saying. And like when I was a kid I never noticed it. But then watching it over and over again, I like I said I see different things each time, but
Right.
my mind just goes to I wonder if Obi-Wan joined them and they overthrew
Hmm.
Sidious, would everything have gone a different way? Would
Right. Intrinsically, that series of decisions would have had to shift things. That's always one of the fun things when a universe is well enough built that you can play the what if game in your head, that you can look at the character and like and not only like wonder what would have happened in the universe, but like a personality or a character is so well designed that you can really think like, cool, like what does Obi-Wan really do in that situation? I've seen enough, like I've seen him played and played well enough that I can really wonder, like, right? I think that he does have enough bend in him to not necessarily stay on that straight and narrow path, to let
yeah,
things become a little bit more gray. And then exactly like what happens to the universe as a wider whole. If the Jedi themselves, if they acknowledge the decay within their system, as opposed to pretending that it does not exist, right? How much does that shift everything?
and I'm just wondering if we could do a shout out to Disney to see if they'll do a what if episode
Right?
on what would have happened
Hmm.
and bring George Lucas and all these amazing writers and everything. And I don't know, I'd like to see what Dave Filoni and John Favreau would have with this one.
Yeah, let everybody, yeah, again, like much like Marvels, let everybody just take a concept and run with it. Like let's just get strange with things for a little bit. That would be fun. I would totally be
I
down.
think like they did the Marvel what ifs. What if they did a Star Wars what if?
Yeah, right? You absolutely could. Just
Just
see like
saying.
how, yeah, see how other things play out. Yeah, I would watch that one too. Exactly. We'll see what's up. We'll see what's up.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So those are some of our like big wandery questions as we look at that universe. I'm gonna bring it back in. I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller because this is always a fun one too. What color would your lightsaber be?
See, I don't know. That's such a tough one because I mean, I don't know I like the blue, I like the
Mm-hmm.
green,
Mm-hmm.
but I almost want to say the yellow
Oh, nice.
because
Nice.
I
Yellow
kind of like
fun.
that one.
Nice.
I don't
I
know why.
go Mace Windu purple every time.
Yeah.
If you can't, I love the Mace Windu purple.
I always growing up and like playing some of these video games where they had like I forget what there was the one Star Wars game and you could play as Plo Koon
Mm-hmm.
and he had the yellow lightsaber. I was like, that's awesome.
That's the one.
And that ever since then, like then you watch like the is it the Jedi Knight like
Yeah,
the
yes,
guard
right?
has the yellow. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I always like the yellow.
That was the one.
I
There you
mean,
go.
yeah, Mace Windu's purple
Good
is
choice. Yes,
iconic.
for me it was always Mace Windu's purple. Once I saw that, I was like, oh, buddy, done. No question. No question, purple lightsaber for me. It also helps that you got Samuel L. Jackson wielding it, but like, yeah, that's got to be like the coolest.
Well, you know
So
the
fun.
story behind that one, right?
No, tell me that one.
So I was watching a thing where um Samuel L. Jackson was talking to George Lucas and like I don't know if it was like a behind the scenes,
Right.
but he was like, can I have a different colored lightsaber because I want to be able to pick me out of the crowd when
I went in
running.
the big fight scenes.
And George was like, well, it's usually red, blue, or green, but maybe we could make it.
Just a slight
Yeah, and
for
that's where we
you,
ended up with the
since it is.
purple.
I can see that
And that
happening.
I mean that was cool that happened because now that they got all these different colors you can pick from.
Yeah, exactly. It really did change, and especially because it's one of those things that each Jedi is trying to kind of like form their own lightsaber. So, right? If I'm out there picking a crystal, if I'm finding my own stuff, oh, we've got a slight dog interruption. For me, it's going to be purple every time. That's the way
Yeah.
to go. All right, so we could spend a million years within Star Wars, but I'm going to try and keep us a little bit smaller today. So, if you have any other like last part, I'm going to let that be my last big question, at least for now. This is a universe that we're going to come back to. We're going to spend a lot of time in
Oh,
Star
absolutely.
Wars. We have a lot of other places to go. There's other movies to talk about. There's shows to talk about. Their character. I mean, like they continue to make things. But is there anything else that you want to sum up? Anything that you would leave the Star Wars universe or leave this episode with?
I mean, without getting too deep into anything, I really got nothing for right now. I mean, just love the original trilogy and I do like one through three too.
Yeah, yeah. They did. They switched a lot in tone. Like we kind of changed that universe up, but there's some magic that happens in all of those movies, and they are without a doubt like a huge thing for millions of people, and they have been forever. And they're like that for us too. It's one of those things that Star Wars is special. It works on a whole other level. Really, really does. All right. Well, in that case, let us know which your favorite movies are. Which ones did you like the best? Um, what color is your lightsaber going to be? Who's your favorite character?
Yeah.
Where do you find yourself in the Star Wars universe? Yeah, anything that we missed out, give us a shout.
Yeah, so subscribe, like, and leave us some comments
Yeah.
and anything that you want us to cover.
Yeah, exactly. Let us know what it is. All right. So I'm Lauren,
I'm Joe.
and may the force be with you. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk to you later.